All right, welcome back to another episode of the Infinite Moment Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the stress that service workers often feel. And specifically, I'll be talking about my experience in the service tech industry as a refrigeration technician, a little bit about like on call and dealing with the stress of that situation, and just some general tips and things to know about stress in the industry of like service work, whether that's OTR drivers, construction workers, refrigeration technicians, even restaurant servers, just any kind of job where you're in the position of basically providing like a service that takes some extent of like manual labor and has some stresses that come from that. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to recount an experience that I had during an on-call shift. We'll take a look at an article that kind of goes over this topic, and we'll talk a little bit about solutions that could potentially help make these lines of work a little bit less stressful. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with my personal experience from an on-call week. All right, so let's get into that right now. This was from the week of December 11th. Here it was again, another week of on-call work. Monday begins at 5:30 a.m. to attend a meeting in Lakeland, followed by several service calls, but first have to assess an accident one of the techs just got in. After hour calls pour in until finally seems to be finished around 3:30 a.m. the next morning. I must get a late start. Need to start at 10 a.m., the text read. Alarm goes off, and I'm on the road by 9:30 a.m. The day ends at a total of about 10 hours. Phew. Next few days include service calls during the day and late into the night after hour calls. Friday night arrives, and I quickly assume I will have 70 plus hours for the week. Saturday, I had to attend a baby shower, which I made my first priority, and then I proceeded to run calls from 11:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. The next day I ran several more calls and arrived home by 1 a.m. Finally, my week of the on-call rotation comes to an end. I opt to take the next day off to recover physically, mentally, and spiritually. I also felt that I should create some space between myself and this company. Not because I've decided to stop putting an effort to my career, but because I feel like when disputes arise, sometimes space is necessary. My intent is to continue to do quality work and continue to try and improve my professionalism and skill. However, I feel I need to tamp down my emotional response and response reflex to my fellow coworkers. As I continue to struggle and improve, so do I expect the company will as well. So, yeah, that wraps up the last on-call week I had. Just kind of emphasizes the stress that can come with that situation. For anyone who's never worked on call before, just imagine for an entire week, you can't really schedule or make plans. You have to be readily available to run calls at any point during that time. It doesn't matter if it's 3:30 a.m. in the morning or if you're still running your regular calls for the day. But there's some positives that do come from it. And one of those is recognizing the level of overtime and the money that you'll be able to earn from that. Also, if you can reframe your mind to get beyond the aspect of working and just kind of get into a zen flow of realizing that it's temporary, it's not going to be forever. And, you can still have a pretty good, productive life if you can manage your time well. So just a couple things to keep in mind with that. And from there, let's get into this article. This article comes from Medical News Today. It is titled Why Stress Happens and How to Manage It, written by Adam Feldman. Stress is a natural feeling of not being able to cope with specific demands and events. However, stress can become a chronic condition if a person does not take steps to manage it. These demands can come from work, relationships, financial pressures, and other situations, but anything that poses a real or perceived challenge or threat to a person's well-being can cause stress. Stress can be a motivator, and it can even be essential to survival. The body's fight or flight mechanism tells a person when and how to respond to danger. However, when the body becomes triggered too easily or there are too many stressors at one time, it can undermine a person's mental and physical health and become harmful. Stress is the body's natural defense against predators and danger. It causes the body to flood with hormones that prepares its systems to evade or confront danger. People commonly refer to this as the fight or flight mechanism. When humans face a challenge or threat, they have a partly physical response. The body activates resources that help people either stay and confront the challenge or get to safety as fast as possible. The body produces larger quantities of the chemicals cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. These trigger the following physical reactions: increased blood pressure, heightened muscle preparedness, sweating, alertness. These factors all improve a person's ability to respond to a potentially hazardous or challenging situation. Norepinephrine and epinephrine also cause a faster heart rate. Environmental factors that trigger this reaction are called stressors. Examples include noises, aggressive behavior, a speeding car, scary moments in movies, or even going out on a first date. Feelings of stress tend to increase in tandem with the number of stressors. According to the American Psychological Association's annual stress survey in 2018, average stress levels in the United States were 4.9 on a scale from 1 to 10. The survey found that most common stressors were employment and money. Alright, so just a quick recap of what stress is and how it affects us, so that we can all understand what we're talking about here. So obviously there's things in the environments that we're in called stressors that, cause our fight or flight responses to kick in at some level or another. And what we want to do is properly manage those levels for optimal health and, peace of mind. So next, what we're going to do is take a look at a Reddit post. I posted a question on Reddit asking service technicians to chime in on how they deal with a stressful on-call week. So these will give us some insights and tips and tricks from other people who are actually in the industry. Now, keep in mind, this is Reddit, so anyone can respond, and there's some comments that aren't so helpful, but we'll go through the ones that are, because I think there's some good tips in these, and I've been doing this for about 3 years, so I understand what it takes to kind of manage an stressful on-call situation. All right, so let's go ahead and get into that. All right, so you can find this post on Reddit under the subreddit refrigeration, and it's titled Tips for On-Call Stress Relief. This was posted by me probably about several weeks ago now. And the question I asked is, if you're a service technician, I would like to know, what are your best tips for keeping stress levels low during a demanding on-call week? So let's start with this first comment right here. This commenter says, for me, it's setting timers to remind me to take my damn breaks in music, usually blues, bluegrass, or swing during my breaks and while driving. It's also recognizing and remembering that this work, while important, isn't life critical. In other words, no matter what the boss wants, it takes what it takes. I ain't a doctor, and no one's going to die if I don't get 42 calls done in a day. In the call, I don't ever think about what's coming. I think about that call, and that call only. And at 12 hours, I'm done, regardless of what's popping off. If the boss needs 2 days out of me in 24 hours, then they need to hire some more bodies because I'm done at 12. Y'all need just one more quick one at 1800 when I've been rolling 12 already. You best be talking double time or I'm rolling home. Sleep matters too. Once I hit the door at home, it's a single slug of bourbon, kiss the darling wife, some chow, and chill before bed. Like the gear we work on, we must give ourselves regular and ongoing maintenance. Sleeping at least 7 hours a night and being lazy at least one weekend day is a critical part of that maintenance. which is why I set a 12-hour limit for work. Good food matters a huge amount too. I lean towards Japanese style with a fair bit of brown rice, some veggies, and a little meat for flavor. I'm also partial to red beans and rice, made with brown rice as a staple meal because if it's well seasoned, hot or not, doesn't matter much. It's also cheap and really healthy if you load it with onions, celery, and peppers. And fast food is a rare thing because I generally don't like most of it and haven't liked commercial fried food since they went away from changing the oil every third day or so. So I said, thank you for your insightful response. This comment has a lot of good information packed into it. Listening to music and taking breaks. I'm not great at taking breaks, but psychologically I will. Between my calls, I'll put on my piano music and listen to that until I get to my next stop. And between those stops, I'm not focusing on what may be next. I'm already going to be prepared for that in terms of making sure I have the right parts and tools. And anything else that arises, I just deal with as I'm there. Also, you can't work yourself to death. Um, while we may not all be able to set a 12-hour work limit, it is important that we get a good night's sleep. And if we work late into the night one night, well, we may need to start later the next day. Or eventually, after a long week, we may need to just take off an additional day to, kind of recover from the stress of that situation. But yeah, once you get home, I mean, obviously take advantage of having a really healthy, good meal. If you have a wife or if you're a female and you have a husband, and spending time with your loved ones, your children if you have them. And also, like I said, when you do get to that point where you're not working, take a lazy day if you feel need to, try and catch up on some sleep and just really relax and do some enjoyable things. It'll help you recover and get back ready, rejuvenated for the next shift. All right, here's kind of a funny one, but it could be true. He says, sometimes I cry in my van. Well, sometimes you got to let it out. See, this guy cry, wrench, sigh in that order. All right, here's one that says, just step back. This was a hard thing for me to learn how to do when calls just kept rolling in. Nobody's going to die. Take it one call at a time. I know it's stressful when you're already on call and others are coming in. You'll get to those when you can, and sometimes that may have to be tomorrow. Don't get in your head that you're their Obi-Wan. You aren't their only hope. If the situation is that dire, they can call somebody else if they need faster service. Yeah, this is actually the reality of the situation. Many times employers, they don't want to accept this. They want you to basically continue to show up no matter what the load is. But like he says, you're not their Obi-Wan. This is a business, and if it's that much work, then maybe they need to reassess how many people they have hired and potentially hire more. But there are situations where you're going to have to work beyond what you want to, and these are just good tips on how to deal with that stress. All right, this comment says, I usually just keep doing my life as normal, but carry my phone. So I've had situations like that where I've been on call in the earlier days when I first began, when there was a lot less accounts and service work for us to do. And an on-call week could literally maybe just be 2 or 3 calls. But at the rate that we're running on call now, it's definitely more than just kind of carrying the phone. But good on you if you have a week like that. We need those every now and then. So this guy kind of talks more about reframing the mind. He said, I just worked more. Did that until I was ready to settle down, then adjusted my career to not do on-call anymore. And we've had several guys who've kind of done that too. Instead of working on call, they've decided to adjust and work a weekend shift instead of working on call. So if that's something you could do, maybe just adjusting your actual work shifts could be a viable option if on call is something you completely just want to get away from. All right, so this comment says, you have to set limits if your employer doesn't. 12 hours is more than an honest day's work. If you have to work more than that, it's because your company is understaffed, and unless you own the company, that's not your problem in the slightest. Learn your racks during annual maintenance. Actually check the pressure switches. do an emergency shutdown, and genuinely just F around with anything you're not absolutely sure about. On really busy days, try to solve as much remotely as possible. Push whatever you can over to the day shift. Ask the customer if it's at all possible to move inventory until tomorrow. Once you're there, your only job is to get cool. I fix broken controllers by pulling a cable from the cold room next door to the solenoid of the one with the broken controller, or put the solenoid on a blinker relay. It'll certainly do until the next day, especially if you have 3 more calls to get to. Take breaks and try not to overthink the situation. Just relax and think about all the OT you get at the end of the weekend. So here's a guy who says he's only been doing it about 11 months. I've been doing it about 11 months. I will say that in those 11 months, I've been through worry and frustration to now just knowing how to handle the stress of it. Take time for yourself once a week. Eat well. Trust that you can handle it. And if you need help, it's okay. That's a good point. If you have other technicians or people in your life who understand what an on-call shift is like or what the stress of the job, the demand is like, reach out to them if you feel comfortable speaking with them. There's sometimes just acknowledging that you're having a tough or stressful time can be enough to help release some of that. So never be afraid to kind of reach out to someone who can have that understanding of your situation. Have things that make you laugh available. Also, if it's been a long day, 15 to 30-minute nap. Thinking about loved ones, talking to them. Ultimately, not letting yourself be consumed by work. All right, so that wraps up those responses. So I think that was very insightful. A lot of different comments, a lot of different ways on approaching a stressful shift. And the reason I specifically asked them about on call is because in the line of work as a service technician, specifically a refrigeration technician, your on-call week is going to pretty much be as stressful as the job comes. It's just because of the level of the time, psychologically not feeling like you can, do any, like make plans or anything like that, and lack of sleep, the amount of social interaction that you may have to have, and the mental capacity that it takes. So it is important to try and understand how to deal with this situation. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about being a service technician and go over some tips on how to deal with it. So, service technicians can be summed up as efficient and effective problem solvers. All right, motivated by positive work environments, personal time as well as working with others are both important. Competitive focus towards successful resolution and advancement opportunities. Some of the common stressors that service technicians deal with: unpredictable schedules, demanding customers, complex problems, remote locations, and general uncertainty. All right, so looking at some of the information we've gone over today, here's some of the lessons I've taken from that. When overwhelmed with the current situation, create a reward scenario for getting through your current situation. That means if you know that you're going to have a long day, or say you've had a long day, reward yourself with something enjoyable after that to kind of help recreate that balance so you're not feeling like you're just overexerting yourself without getting anything enjoyable in return. Try to remain logical to reduce negative emotional responses. Yeah, this can happen. This has happened to me where the more the stress builds, the less positive I am, and the more I become like more likely to respond negatively. So trying to be aware of that and maintain and not give in to a negative emotional response can be very important, especially when it comes to relationships in the industry. All right, take power naps or breaks if needed. Sometimes we want to try and just power through the day, whether it's a 10-hour shift or a 18-hour shift or whatever. Sometimes we think, okay, I'll just power through, that way I can get home. But sometimes that's not necessarily safe because that anxiety can build up, and especially like if you're driving, you might start building up road rage and stuff. just take a break, even if it's only 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes. Whether you want to just take a chance to breathe, a moment to breathe, or if you want to take a power nap or something like that, it can come in handy and be quite beneficial. Be sure to make time for high quality meals and drink enough water. You want to keep your body in a healthy, optimal state. If you're super hungry, that's going to add to your stress level. If you're not drinking enough water, again, that's going to add to your stress levels and take a toll on your physical health. Try and stay organized and reduce the amount of clutter. If you know where all your tools, your materials, your parts are, and you don't have to sift through a bunch of mess to find them, that's going to keep the stress levels down and it's going to keep you in a better state to be able to successfully solve the problems you need to solve. All right, time management. Um, focus on your priorities first, and if there's something that maybe you can't get to that's not as demanding, it doesn't need to be taken care of as quickly, then potentially that's something that can be saved for the next day or whenever it's a better time to get to it. Most people like listening to music, so listen to your favorite music, whether it's between calls or you have a Bluetooth headset on that you can listen to music throughout the day. Be sure to listen to music, whatever that is, whatever music you particularly like. Maybe mix it up. I'm a big fan of Amapiano music. That's pretty much what I listen to all day. And yeah, it definitely helps get me through the days, that's for sure. Try to remember why you're even in this industry, why you put forth the effort that you do. Maybe it's for your family, maybe it's for your own personal goals. Maybe you're trying to learn a skill. Maybe you want to start your own business in the industry. Whatever it is, remember why you even started. Remember your goals that you had for entering the industry and use that as the motivating force to continue on. And, talk with friends, talk with family, talk with people who understand the situation that you're in, who are willing to listen, who can provide an ear or maybe even some advice on what they would do, and use that as another way to try and just work through the stress in a positive way. Obviously, not every situation is going to be one where you can easily just reduce the stress while you're there. It's going to be tough sometimes, it's going to have its own challenges, but having tools and having ways to deal with these things is very important if you want to be productive, successful as a service technician and really as almost any worker. But I think people who work in service industries can really benefit from a lot of these tools. All right, but with that being said, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Infinite Moment Podcast. Until next time, y'all take it easy. Peace.